All right, I think we're ready to get going. It's been a few minutes, so let's go ahead and start. So we will have an opportunity to introduce the three of us, but I want to take a moment first. I'll introduce myself, and then we'll talk a little bit about the webinar and why we're here. So I'm Joanne Jastad. I'm a Bravely coach. I've been with Bravely for about 4 years now, and I've been an executive coach, professional certified coach for about 7 years now. And prior to that, I worked in tech for many, many years doing project and product management. Like I said, I live in Vermont. My kids are at school, thank goodness. Dogs are taking a nap in the basement with a bone, so they're great. And yeah, and we're all here to learn a little bit more about nurturing leaders, because they're really the first slide for our teams and who our teams look to for support. And so, some of the kind of the three pillars that we're going to dig into today in our foundation are first are strategies for leadership enhancement. We're going to be talking about effective and actionable strategies designed to elevate your coaching skills. So help you uncover the tools and insights to ensure that your teams are set up for success in today's fast-paced world where it's, incredibly focused on efficiencies. Leads us into our next topic for the webinar, is fostering a culture of happiness and efficiency. So it's kind of towing the line between being efficient and fast, but also making sure that people are enjoying themselves. There's a really powerful connection between positive team culture and enhanced efficiency. And we're going to talk about some practical tips to infuse joy into the workplace, really. And then another one is effective handling of feedback and recognition. That's just a natural part of a team, and being a manager or a director or a leader is having to give feedback and also receive it. Oftentimes we have great feedback from our team members. So we're going to talk about proven methods for leaders to handle feedback constructively, leverage that recognition to boost their team motivation, and gain some really great insights into creating a feedback-rich culture that propels continuous improvement. And so next, I want to introduce our fabulous panelists today. We have Hector Hernandez here with Bravely. So I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself, Hector. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. My name is Hector Hernandez. I am one of the wonderful Bravely coaches. I am calling live today from Toronto, Canada. The Drake Hotel plug there, if they want to give me a coupon for a free stay later. I have been in leadership for well over 13 years now. I owned manager onboarding and manager coaching at LinkedIn. I now have my own practice focusing on enabling managers so they can transform their teams, make them effective, make them productive, make them happy, and make them authentic. So really excited to talk about something that is literally what I live and breathe and pays for my hotel room. So excited to be with you and Jessica and everyone else to talk about this today.
Thank you, Hector. And we also have Jessica Hessels here with Bucket List Rewards, also crazy, random, in Toronto. So we could have put you in the same room today. Jessica, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Awesome. Thanks, Joanne. Appreciate that. I'm not in a hotel room. I am in like a telephone booth, not nearly as exciting, but as Joanne said, I'm also located in Toronto. I'm with Bucket List Rewards. I'm a customer onboarding manager here. So I work very closely with our companies to onboard our Bucket List software into their companies. And we're all things recognition and rewards over here. So really excited to talk about leaders and how recognition rewards can impact leaders as well. So very excited.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I think we have a first slide popping up. Well, it just talks about the nurturing leaders, and then we'll hop right into it. So what the format that we're going to go with is we have some questions that we'll start going through, but I am going to open it up here and there to folks on the call or on the webinar to have some time for at least one or two questions from the group, for the various topics. So we're going to start with is why the focus on leaders now? And Jessica, you're unmuted, so I'll let you hop in and answer that first.
Now I know to keep myself muted next time. No, that's great. So why should we focus on leaders right now? So for sure, and I know Hector, you're gonna chime in afterwards here, but the reality is that the health of a company and the company's culture is really based on leaders. And we see a large correlation, a direct correlation between how leaders are doing within the company with how the health of the company is as a whole as well. So it really makes sense to focus on the leadership team and ensuring that they have the proper training and the right resources and the right tools, and they're also in the proper positions for themselves, as it has a very big trickle-down effect to everything else that is going on. And we all know that, a lot of people leave their jobs because of leaders. There's different statistics out there. We have one that says, people quit bosses, not jobs. 57% of people, they're going to quit because of their boss. So we need to really get to the root issue, the root cause of what is impacting the company. And a lot of the times that is the leadership team. So we really need to focus there.
Yeah. And that brings me to my next question is like, how does the approach of a leader just provide direct influence to employee engagement and performance?
I mean, the
Hector? Yeah.
plus one to everything Jessica said, but think about your own experience, everyone on the call, the experience you've had with managers. And think about, on the one hand, that exceptional manager, and think about how you showed up for the team, for them, how you felt about your work, the work you did the day. And then think, on the other hand, about that really not so great manager and the impact that person had on you, on your morale. On the manager's position creates a culture on the team that has such an outside influence on not just performance, but on resilience, on agility, on strategic thinking, on motivation, on morale, on how people connect and how they get along and how they collaborate and innovate together. The manager, so when Jessica was saying, man, people quit managers, not jobs, the manager often is the encapsulation of what the job is like for the individuals. And you can have managers with great intentions, but if they don't understand how that the way they show up, the impact that has on people, it can create really, really negative experiences with which, yes, influence performance, but it influences so much more.
Yeah, great. I appreciate that. So, another thing I'd love to learn a little bit more is about how leadership skills are really different from individual contributor skills.
Yeah, I think this is a really important topic to really understand here, is that they're very separate skills. As an individual contributor, you have exactly your job, like exactly what you need to do to perform what you have to perform. But the leadership's role is very different from that. They are not there to perform your job. They are there to help you perform your job. So that encompasses so many different things, like Hector had mentioned before. How are they actually leading you? What are the resources they're providing you? All the other great things that they need, but their role really is there to help their individual contributors perform their job really well and the best that they can. And I think the one thing that happens a lot in companies is that you see a team of people, you see the individual contributors, you have some that are really great, and you think that's a person that is going to be a good leader. So they end up getting promoted into a leadership position without there being a real assessment here if they are actually meant to be a leader. Do they have those right qualities? So then they get put into these positions, and a lot of times they're left, to hang to dry and kind of figure it out on their own. And then they're not great leaders at that point because they have the lens of an individual contributor and they haven't been shifted over to that manager lens. And then if they're not provided that proper training and the resources, they kind of still live in this individual contributor mindset while trying to manage people. And then people on their team are not getting the support that they need. And then things start to fall apart and people aren't happy. And then they leave the company. So it's a very different skill set here. And Hector, you can probably talk a little bit more as well. So I'll let you have a moment too here.
Yeah, it's plus one to everything. And it boils down to an individual contributor what they need to learn, how they need to be skilled to do the job is essentially the job. So you can call it technical, tactical, it's the mechanics of the job. Uh, for a leader, for a manager, they should be aware of how jobs are done. Of course, part of their job is knowing and helping and giving advice and coaching, et cetera, et cetera. But the real crux of their job is human skills, soft skills, leadership skills. I'll give you a specific example. At LinkedIn, manager onboarding, we did not teach product. We did not teach org structure. We taught none of that. They got that. There's plenty of resources for that. They had another track to learn that stuff. What we taught was leadership. We taught coaching. We taught team building. We taught how to run effective one-on-ones, how to run effective team meetings. So very, very, very different than the technical, tactical skills that I see need to learn. And it's very important to appreciate that because to Jessica's point, otherwise, all you have are teams of super individual contributors leading individual contributors, but no one's actually being a leader, which requires a very different set of skills.
Yeah, no, I appreciate those responses. They're great. I also want to throw that out now, just to get us teed up, is like, what leadership skills from the folks on the webinar, what are you seeing that's a real lack or an area that needs more focus, more investment, in the way that we're operating these days, with remote teams. So let it come in and I'll kind of formulate a question based on that. I'll move on as they come in. I'm going to move on to the next one here and just sort of ask that same thing from folks here, is like, what do you think's lacking? Like, what do you think we really need to invest in?
I mean, I'm seeing coaching and feedback, and I would put those under that same bucket of development, skills to develop your people. And if there's the one thing, that's the thing. That's the thing. To move someone away from a super individual contributor, to move them away from, I'm someone that did the job, now I'm leading people doing the job, and I'm still doing the job. You have to help them learn how to detach from it and coach other people so they can do that. Coach them to develop, coach them to performance. There's so many ways that coaching comes to life, but the skill of coaching is sometimes underappreciated in the nuance of how to do it well. It's something that takes clarity and practice and patience and being okay with not knowing the answer and moving away from, oh, I know what to do because I had this, trying to move away from that. It's very difficult. And feedback is such an essential part of that too, because feedback can either be a destructive one-way conversation in which I give you opinion, assumption, and bias that is not helpful, or it can be a dialogue around developmental areas in which we can explore a situation, the impact it has, some behaviors that are applied, and a way forward, strategies that we can both collaboratively work together on to move someone. But it's not as easy as just saying, oh, I have feedback for you and I'm going to give it. There's a lot of skills that go into both coaching and feedback.
Yeah. These are great. And I'm seeing some really nice ones come in, like, just to go back to your point, Hector, of not giving the solution and letting folks come up with their solutions and having the teams kind of build their confidence, and help them to essentially be able to operate a little bit more autonomously. And I had some interesting questions here too, which I think is so top of mind now with over the last few years, is, how do we nurture leaders in really supporting their remote teams, right? When folks are all remote, like, what do you think of? What comes to mind when you think of how they can kind of create team bondness and make it really feel like a team?
Well, since I'm off mute, I guess that's me. No, this is a really, really good question, because obviously the world has moved towards working remotely, and we have, lots of companies that are all remote or they're hybrid. So it is really important. I think a couple of things that managers need to keep in mind is that people work different ways, and they also want to be approached different ways as well. And one of the things that we see happen with leaders is that they treat their team all the same. that everyone's just one person and they approach them all the same, but that's not how people are. We're individuals. So I think it's really important for leaders to understand their team on a team basis, but also to really understand them as an individual, and then to tailor their management style to help the team as a whole, but also that individual. So if you are really remote and you have somebody who is a much more visual person and they're much more verbal, that's likely going to require more meetings, like Zoom meetings, things like that. But if you have other contributors who are much more written and maybe they're a little bit more hands off, they just they do their job. You don't have to be involved as much as other people. You might be able to communicate more with those folks through like Slack or Teams or things. But then it's also up to the manager as well to lead by example here, right? So lots of companies do social activities, especially in this virtual world where we are more physically disconnected. Companies will run social activities. And if the company doesn't run a social activity, the manager can run one for their team. But it's important that the manager is participating. It's very common that you have these activities that people can connect and really bond with one another, but then the manager or the leader isn't there. They just don't show up. And if your manager and your leader's not showing up, then that kind of sets the tone for the team. Then it's like, okay, my manager doesn't really care about having this bonding with me. So why would I show up next time? There's no point in going. So I think, like I said before, one, the managers and leaders really need to understand their teams as a whole, as well as individuals, so they can provide different opportunities and ways to connect virtually. And then when there is those connection points, they need to be present and involved and really on top of it as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, all I can do is underline what Jessica said because it's spot
Great.
on. But it goes back to you have just first be aware that virtual means disconnected, and it's like a lot of we underappreciate how much we learned about each other by being together in physical places. You just pick up on cues. We're like, hey, you want to go for a happy hour? The person's like, oh, I'm not going to ask you again. But I never had to ask that person, do you like happy hour? Yes or no. I could just pick up on their cues. And there's so much information that was gathered that way that you never had to have what we call awkward. I don't think are awkward. I just think are very important things to ask people. Like, how would you like to be more connected to the team?
Right.
Would you like me to ping you every single day just to check in at the text, like, hey, how you doing? Would you like me to leave you alone except for when you reach out to me? We have to ask. We can't assume.
Right.
There'll be no one size fits all. So Jessica said all this, just underline. We have to adapt, and we can only know how to adapt if we ask some questions.
Yeah. No, that's great. All right, well, moving right along. So what's the best way to determine, so if we go the other way, like instead of focusing on the leader, if we focus on the team, how do we determine kind of like what they need from their leader? And how do we coach them to getting what they need from their leader?
So Rebecca Chan actually has a fantastic example. And I've seen many of these in which managers create, or by the way, just go online, Google, team charters is a good word to use. They're templates where people fill in, like, how do you like to be engaged? Do you like phone calls, or what's your no-fly zone? When, like, kids, time do you have to be a parent and you can't, be on the work? You let people identify that. There's another strategy that I do often with leaders, which is an exercise called start, stop, continue. And the way it works is you, as the leader, you bring your team together. So let's just say it was us. I would say, all right, Jessica, Joanne, I want to know how to best serve you. I want you to literally take a piece of paper, 3 columns. What can I start doing to best serve you? What can I stop doing to best serve you? And what can I continue to do? And then you hear from your team under that context around, like, what are the things you're not doing that you begin to do? What are the things that you think are well-intentioned but are damaging? You stop doing it. And what are the things you are doing that work so you can continue to do it? And that very simple start, stop, continue exercise, it creates a lot of great information for you right away. And by the way, there's ways you can do it to have fun. You can make it like one of those online, Google forms and things like that. You can make a game out of it, but just getting those 3 points, what can you start doing, stop doing, and continue doing, and having them tell you in a safe way is so, it is easy. It is such an easy way to get
Yeah,
this.
I love that. How often would you say that a leader would do that with their teams, or even like have their teams do it with each other, right? It seems just like such a great feedback giving and receiving and thanking for the feedback process. But how often do you think a leader should employ that tool
So I've always
or could
recommended
employ
you do
that
it,
tool
you do it minimally twice a year, best practice quarterly. And again,
quarterly?
yeah, you don't want to make it like if it's a heavy, oh my goodness, give me feedback versus first month of the quarter,
Right.
have fun. We're 15 minutes, start, stop, continue. And then after that, we're gonna, we'll watch some silly YouTube videos and have a fun time, right? Maybe that's not the most effective use of team time. But
You
you
know,
make,
but it's
yeah,
fun. We
make
talked
it fun.
about joy,
Yeah, you make
right?
it productive, right? You make it something that people see like this is value additive, and you do it regularly. Not monthly, that's too much, but quarterly.
Yeah, that's great. I like that.
I think to like piggyback off of what Hector is saying here is that asking for the feedback is really critical, but also doing something with it. I've been in circumstances before. I worked in a company where we spent 30 minutes filling out a survey, and it took a whole year for the company to even assess the survey, and then nothing happened. So it is important that if you are collecting feedback, there is an outcome to it. It doesn't mean you're always going to change everything you do, of course, because some things you might have to continue doing anyways. But there should be some type of outcome where the person who gave the feedback feels like it was heard, it was
Hmm.
taken, it was considered. And then that way, when the feedback comes back again, or where they get the opportunity to give feedback again, they will be more likely to do it because they know that it is going towards something. And I think another thing that we can also think about is asking for feedback in different ways, right? If you have a scenario where your person doesn't trust their leader, they might not
Mm-hmm.
give you feedback directly because they
Of
might feel
course.
uncomfortable. Or they might just feel uncomfortable in general, might have nothing to do with trust. They just maybe don't like the idea of giving feedback directly to that person. So having like anonymous surveys can also help as well. But also just having it be like an open door kind of policy, right? Like I love Hector's idea of having like a structure where you collect feedback in a structured format, but also letting them know like you can give me feedback any day, it's fine. And
Hmm.
it's sort of an open door policy. And I think when we pair feedback and recognition together, people get used to it as well. If they're used to giving feedback and they're used to recognizing one another, then they get into that and they're more likely to do it. And then the reverse happens where when you give them feedback as the leader to that individual contributor, they're more likely to receive it and feel more comfortable with it. But if you only kind of do feedback, like Hector said, I mean, once a year, once every 3 years, and you do absolutely nothing with it, as a leader, when you go to give them feedback, how are you going to expect that they're going to receive it if you won't even receive the feedback that yourself?
So, Jessica, I'm going to put you on the spot here for just a moment because I know that one of the things that we love to do at Bravely is role playing. So, I love that example of the feedback and the recognition. If you're going to put me in the spot where I'm your person that you're giving the feedback recognition to, can you give me that feedback and recognition just so we can show the folks on the webinar what that looks like?
Yeah, for sure. I think, I don't think you necessarily have to do feedback and recognition at the same time. I think there's a time and a place for everything. And I think if you are giving really constructive feedback, that might not be the time to also do recognition. So I think it's important that you build these things continuously so that you're giving them continuous recognition. So then when the day comes where I say, Joanne, hey, I need to give you some feedback. You're used to having feedback. You're used to having positive
Hmm.
feedback. You're also used to having constructive feedback. So I know I did not do your role play at all, but I can give you some
That's
feedback if
okay.
you would like.
That's okay. I think we got it there. It's perfect. So, that leads into the other question is, how do you have a hard conversation with someone who is really needs leadership coaching, but maybe they don't have the self-awareness that they need that next step, right? How do you sort of ease them into learning emotional intelligence? And self-awareness is one of the, I mean, I think for me, it's one of the most important, because once you have that self-awareness, then you can start working on the other items like self-regulation and other areas. But tell me how you would um, have that conversation with someone.
Hector,
Well,
I saw you come off mute, so gonna
Yeah,
let you go first.
I wouldn't just jump into it. I say that sincerely and seriously, because the most important part of a difficult, courageous, challenging, you feel that word in conversation, is really understanding first your intent, and then
Mhm.
making sure there's enough trust to have that conversation. Because if your intent is just you want to get some stuff off your chest, you just don't like that person. And then if there is no
Mm.
trust, like, yeah, maybe the person needs to hear this, but they don't need to hear from you because they don't
Mm.
trust and there's no intent. So making
Mhm.
sure that first, the reason you need to give this feedback is because you have seen situations in which this behavior, this lack of leadership, is having impact, and you want to invest in the person's development. And giving feedback for feedback's sake, I don't value that as much as giving feedback because I want to help you grow, which means I need to help you, and I need to be prepared to take that step to help you grow. So that's
Mhm.
test number one. If the answer to what's your intent is anything other than I really want to help this person grow, I believe in them, and I'm ready to help them, that's the only answer that's acceptable to begin to start to give the feedback. And the second thing is to know, is there trust? Because
Mhm.
if there is no trust, you may not be the right person to give that feedback. Even if that thing happens, you might see it. If they don't trust you, if they're not going to take it anyway. They're going to do nothing with
No,
it. You might
it'll
make
be
it,
empty.
it'll be empty. You could make it worse. You
Yeah.
could have an enemy when you had a neutral.
Yeah.
So there has to be trust. And if there's no trust, work on building the trust, work on getting to know them, get
Yeah.
to you as someone that is invested in them, which takes time. And happy to connect offline to talk about building trust. That's its own webinar. But
Yeah.
once you have those two criteria, entering the conversation by being very clear to them about what your intent is. My intent is to help you grow. My intent is
Yeah.
really to unlock your potential as a leader. My intention is to create a place that's great in the organization. Be very transparent on what that intent is, and then have a compassionate but sincere and honest conversation. So talking to someone about a gap in their leadership can't be based on, oh, I think you're a bad leader, you're having all these negative things. It's, what are the situations, what are the behaviors, what is the impact that is having a conversation that is very much anchored on reality, not assumption. The part of being prepared for it is knowing what you're going to be speaking to, and then
Yeah.
regularly throughout the conversation stopping and checking in on the person.
Mm.
You said your
Mhm.
intent was to help them. You claim to have trust, prove it. And you prove it by stopping the conversation every now and then. Hey, let me just check. I mean, is this resonating? Am I on the right track?
Mm. Mhm.
Check in. Like, this is the information that I have. I'm not here to fight over the information, but I want to hear your side. I want to hear where you're coming from. I want to understand it. Having that as part of the dialogue, and making sure that you end any feedback with not a, hey, you should be a better leader, take this and do something with it.
Mm.
You're leaving them with a bag of doo-doo.
Right.
Ending the conversation with very specifically, what are you going to do? How can I help? And if you're
Yep.
going to help, to that point before around like start, stop, continue, you better follow up on it. Yes, you better follow up on it. You better make sure
Right.
you were there for them. If you said, hey, I'm going to coach you to be a coach, you better be showing up as a coach. If you said, hey, I'm going to give you stipend, get a coach, get them that stipend, make sure they use it.
Right. No, that's great. And it's interesting. It leads me right into the next one, and you already kind of touched on a little bit. Is like, what are some of these strategies for enhancing leaderships? And you started to talk about coaching. What are some other things about that? If you could tell us more about, there's, I'll leave it open for that, but there's coaching, there's training. Jessica, there's another area that I think that you can speak to. Um, so why don't we, Hector, I'll let you continue a little bit more and then we'll hop over to Jessica.
So I was reading the comments and I honestly didn't hear your question because I was reading some of the great comments about
Oh,
Jessica's like, I'll go on mute. You'll
Hector,
talk about Jessica. When I
I
heard her,
know.
oh, Jessica,
We're
like, okay, wait, I can keep reading.
so we have so much multitasking. I
I'm
know I
on
have
it.
some great things in the side too that I'm going to touch on as well. There's been some really great feedback, and I appreciate the engagement from folks on the webinar. So thank you so much for that. Um, just what are some strategies for enhancing leadership skills? You touched on coaching. What else is there? What do you think is like a great, first pass? We're getting someone into, the leadership skill training. Like, where do we start?
First and foremost, like, actually do it. Get budget for it. Make it a thing. And I'm not saying that jokingly. I mean that seriously. I worked in the
Right.
space of leadership development and enablement and training. And what was the first thing that would be cut when we went for budget? The public. But then it would be manager. Like, oh, this train's for the manager. No, we need another IC. Need this. Let's take the money and put it there. Don't do it. Actually prioritize investing in your leaders. And there are a ton of fantastic resources out there, ton of programs. Bravely has some fantastic resources to be able to enable managers, teach them some fundamentals. Coaching, give them access to coaching. Human skills cannot be taught by reading pieces of paper or watching videos. They can't.
Right.
They have to be applied. There has to be failure. They have to reflect. They have to try. They have to work. So getting them mentorship or getting them coaching to be able to actually do it. And another thing I'll throw out there, which I sometimes is a little controversial, but I think it's actually so essential and effective. If you want to learn how to be good at everything, you need to observe people doing the job. So you want to be a leader that has great team meetings and great one-on-ones. Record yourself running a one-on-one and share that with your mentor, with your coach, and have a mechanism to be able to get feedback of what you're doing. Because there's feedback that comes up from your directs, which is so important. But that's very different than feedback on you doing your job from a more neutral party. How are you giving the feedback? How are you coaching? That requires a different set of eyes. So I invite everyone, record yourself doing those stuff. It's not comfortable. I get it, but it works.
I love that. Thank you. And then Jessica, can you touch a little bit about how recognition and rewards feeds into leadership skills?
Yeah, for sure. So with recognition and rewards, it really, especially, the recognition piece here is a really important piece from your leadership team, because leaders, of course, are providing that constructive feedback, as they should be, but they should be also providing feedback on the things that you are doing well. Whether it is your job, like if it's the baseline of your job, leadership should still be telling you that you are doing a good job at your job. And, of course, everything beyond that as well. Like, those are very important pieces. And it is a skill for people to learn how to recognize. And we see this with different generations. Older generations aren't used to recognition. It's kind of foreign. It's weird. It's like, why are you telling me I'm doing a good job? I'm here to do my work. You don't need to do that. Whereas the younger generation, we've kind of grown up a bit more with recognition, so they're a little bit more used to it. But it is a skill for a leader to learn how to give that recognition to that individual contributor so that it has an impact. Of course, part of the impact is the individual contributor feeling good. They know they're doing a good job. But the part from the leadership side is reinforcement of what that person is doing. And that's why recognition is really important, because it reinforces people's behavior. If I get recognized for doing something, I'm more likely to do it again next week because I know that I should be doing that. So leaders, and tying back to what I said before, where leaders need to understand their teams as individuals, because providing recognition needs to be a very individual thing. You need to know what is going to be receptive by that person. Do they like big flashy things? Are they more quiet? Are they going to want recognition that's not visible to other people? Are they more likely to different types of recognition? So really, like, understanding them so you can tailor your recognition to that person. And then it helps to build that trust as well that Hector was talking about before, because if you are recognizing them for the things they're doing well, when it comes time to do that feedback, they're going to know that it's coming from a place of care and empathy, and I'm here to help you. And it's going to come across a lot more because they're used to having different types of feedback.
That's great. Thank you so much, Jessica.
You're welcome.
I think that's really a good place to stop and ask, are there any more open questions that we can help answer?
There was something else that I was, while people are potentially typing in, there was something else I did wanted to just note as well, is when we're thinking about bringing leaders in to the company, the first place starts with picking the right leaders. And I think that's where a lot of companies kind of go awry. They don't pick the right leader from the beginning. Of course, you don't always know until somebody's in the role, and there's that piece there. But we do need to be very intentional about who we are bringing into leadership, and ensuring that they have those skills, or at least have the ability to learn, especially those soft skills. And then also understanding that not everyone might be the right fit, right? I think we have a tendency, you put someone in a position, leave them, they're there, we can't do anything about it. But that's just torture. It's torture probably for the person in that position. It's torture for the team. It has so many detrimental outcomes. So I think that companies need to also just be okay with saying, we made this decision. It wasn't the best decision. Let's see what we can do to fix this, instead of just leaving the leader high and dry and then wondering why the team is deteriorating over time.
Great. I appreciate that. I'm going to take one question from here and I'll let you guys pick which one. We have a couple here. There's one on is how to identify a leader in a high performing, like how to identify that a high performing IC can become a leader. Another question is how do we, get leaders to understand how their influence is on culture? And a third one is what tools can be recommended for measurement. So I think we only have time for one. So just pick which one you'd want to answer. And I'll tee that off to Hector.
I'll start with identifying a leader, because I think it piggies off of what Jessica was saying, which is just so important.
Thank you.
People in there, first of all. And so change the criteria of what you look for in terms of what the manager would be. So however I'm not saying however you're looking for them now is wrong, but look for not are they doing a job, are they coaching, are they motivating? Speak to their peers and ask them, like, hey, don't ask how are they doing, are they hitting the number? Do they coach you? Do they offer to when the team is down, do they motivate you? Do they seem to create a sense of cohesion and collaboration? How do they work with other partners? Are they solving problems up, or are they only looking and asking for people to solve their problems? Looking at those sort of behaviors versus just, are they doing these technical components? A shortcut, by the way, to creating a bench of leaders is to create an emerging leader program. And an emerging leader program is a twofer, because if you create a good emerging leader program, you have effectively created a very good manager enablement program. You can use one to really build off the other. And in an emerging leader program, you can take high-performing individual contributors that want or think they want to be a leader. You teach them the fundamental skills of leadership, the coaching, the motivation, the performance management. You will then be able to see the people that rise and say, yeah, they have the chops. You will also get the people that can be sincere and genuine and say, hey, you know what? No, I never want to fire a human being. That sounds horrible. I don't want to do that. Great. You no longer have to put them in that position. And again, you can take the bones of that and you can use that as a training program for your managers. Teach them the same things, come back, reinforce, and be able to really create a culture of leadership.
Awesome. Love those suggestions.
Wonderful.
Hector.
Yeah, those are great. Thank you. I learned that we do have a little bit more time, so we can ask one of those other questions. So one of the other ones that I brought up was, how do we get leaders to understand like their influence on culture and engagement?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and that's something that we come across a lot with implementing a recognition and reward platform in companies. So the first thing is really education, right? The first part would be showing them the stats. Like there's so many statistics out there that show us the influence that managers and leadership teams have on their team and the company as a whole. So I would really start with educating the leadership team first. And people love stats, right? Especially people in leadership roles. They love to see those statistics. So back it up with the stats. The second thing is if you want to get like more deep into it, is having the leader like assess how they think their team is doing and feeling, and then getting the team to do the exact same thing. And it's gonna give you a good comparison here. So if how the leadership is thinking the team is doing is wonderful, it's amazing, everyone's loving life, they're all doing great. and the team comes out with something completely different, then you can present that with that leader and say, look, there is a mismatch here. And through your questions, you can determine like, what is the mismatch, so that you know if is it resources, is it something the leadership is doing? Is it someone on the team that's causing it? But by presenting them with the information so that they can see for themselves that the team feels different than you feel about things, then that should hopefully at least get them thinking like, okay, I'm not viewing things the way they view it. How can we adjust things so that we feel all aligned with how the culture is and the team? Now, it all comes back to like the things we've talked about before is the trust factor and really feeling that people's opinions are valid and are heard. And sometimes that takes time. If you have a culture that is really broken, it's going to take time, and it can take years to rebuild a culture in a company. And that's okay. You just have to understand it might take some time, but really taking that feedback from people and doing something with it is going to help the culture repair over time. And then giving the leaders that information about what they do does impact based on the stats, based on the information that was provided back. Hopefully that will open their eyes to that. If it doesn't, then you might have a case of maybe they're not a good leader. Maybe they're not fit for the role. If they can't see those things or refuse to see their impact, they're not a good leader at that point, and they likely should not be in the role, and something might need to be done there.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you, Jessica. So I think, you know, we've had some great input. If anybody has anything else they want to add, pipe up and let me know, from Hector and Jessica. And then, not to push coaching so much, but really when you talk about a broken culture, coming in and giving everybody that confidential person that they can really like let their emotions out with, talk about their professional goals, their personal goals. And then because in coaching, we try to come up with action items that says, well, then now you're going to go do something. And then we check in because we stay with them and keep them accountable, right? And check in on how things are going. And so everything, you know, um, with everybody working on themselves and everybody doing little movements, right? Then we all kind of come together and it just gets better over time, right? So that's where that's what I've seen from coaching from my input. Um, so great, thank you. If you do either of you have anything else you want to add before we kind of take it to the finish line?
Plus one on the coaching thing, because it's coaching should be coming from all sorts of sides. And me as a leader to my team, the coaching I offer them is going to be fundamentally different to the
Yeah,
coaching you would be getting from someone outside the organization,
right.
And that could be fundamentally different from the other type of coaching. That's something else you want to do. Like, I'll give you a personal story for myself. I had my manager who was a great coach. I had a Bravely coach who was great at helping me talk about bigger career things. And I was doing a side hustle to start my own coaching business at the side. And I had my business coach. And all three of those together were helping me, yes, focus on different parts of my professional life, but every one of them was unlocking things which helped me unlock everything in everything I was doing. So a culture of coaching is, please equip and enable your managers to coach. But that also means, please empower individual contributors to get outside coaches. Last thing I'll say on the subject, it does happen a lot of times that you have a manager, the greatest of hearts, the greatest of intents, who is the right coach for 3 people on their team and is not the right coach for 2 people on their team, because not one coaching style applies to all. So what do you do for those 2 people? They still need a coach.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Hector. Wow. That is, that I don't know. I feel a little bit like mind blown by just you even saying that. So that's a really great takeaway. Yeah, no, that's awesome. I love that. I love that.
It's food
And
for
it is, yeah, no, that's great food for thought. And I think, like you said, companies should be definitely looking into those types of things, different resources. And I think for like leadership too, same thing you said, Hector, like they should be having coaching from different places and have access to coaching. I can't tell you the amount of people I've talked to that have went into leadership positions that had no coaching. They barely even had someone they could go to because, it was so busy and there was no resources. So definitely having those resources available to coach is very important.
Thank you both. That was wonderful. Yeah, I had a really nice time on this webinar. I learned some things, some skills, some takeaways. So thank you both. And I think that we're ready to talk a little bit about so a little bit about Bravely. So if you want to learn more, we have the ability to, if you see that QR code there on the screen, Bravely is a training and a coaching platform. We provide employees with professional, personalized development that brings them to higher levels of engagement and performance. It's all 100% confidential. It's all led by the employee. And then we have wonderful new training programs as well. So please, click on that QR code and see a little bit more. You'll also have the ability to schedule coaching sessions with myself or with Hector, or I believe with anybody else from our coaching platform. Yeah, and I really just appreciate all of your time and that you're here with us. Jessica, can you touch on bucket list?
Yeah, for sure. So like I said at the beginning, Bucketlist Rewards, we are a top-ranked employee recognition platform. And we're here to introduce an effective rewards and recognition strategy within your organization. We can do lots of different things. We can automate your processes, provide a vehicle for 360-degree recognition across your organization. And, to brag a little bit, we have some of the coolest rewards in the business as well. I like to call them the cherry on top of your recognitions. So if you're looking to implement a new program or evolve your existing program, we'd love to chat with you further.